Hi, I'm Anna McEwen, and this is The Epic Narrative. And now, my dad, Bob Switzer.
Yesterday, last week, whenever this is coming out, we leave right with we have Mephibosheth, who kind of goes back and forth with Zibiah, who had obviously been loyal to David and provided for David and loved David. But Mephibosheth was at least questionable as to what happened. But then he shows himself as proof that he's been loyal. And then there was the whole, David's like, all right, listen, you're both loyal and you're both awesome. And you know what? Just divide all of Jonathan's property and livestock amongst yourselves. From David's perspective, this is all good. I get it. I'm not gonna pick sides. Let's just celebrate each other. Let's celebrate that we both were loyal to me, to the kingdom, to the culture that we were developing, and the two of you divide up what's good. And Mephibosheth was like, all right, fine. Actually, I don't really need all of that. The income is irrelevant to me because I stay at the palace and you take care of me. So I'll just stay with you. Zibiah and his 15 sons or whatever can have all the livestock and all the goods. And then you have this other character that comes on the scene in verse 31. It is I want to call him Barzillai, but I know that's not his name. Barzillai. I wish it was the R was somewhere else because it would be Brazil, but it's Barzillai. Yeah. Okay. So you've said it 6 times, Bob. We know you can't say it and we know it's not right, but it's close enough. So we'll go with it. Okay, good. So Barzillai comes in and now he's got a long story here that he basically alludes to. So I'll read it and then we'll talk about it. So he's of Gilead, also came down from Rogelem, which is where he lives, across the Jordan with the king to send him on his way from there. Now he was very old, 80 years old. He had provided for the king during his stay in Menahem, and he was a very wealthy man. The king, David, says to Barzillai, cross over with me, stay with me in Jerusalem. I'll provide for you. And he answered the king, how many more years will I live that I should go up to Jerusalem with the king? I'm 80 years old. Can I tell the difference between what is enjoyable and what is not? Can your servant taste what he eats and what he drinks? Can I hear the voices of male and female singers? Why should your servant be an added burden to the king, the Lord my king? Your servant will cross over the Jordan with the king for a short distance, but why should the king reward me in this way? Let your servant return that I may die in my own town near my tomb of my father and my mother. And here your servant, Kimham, let him cross over with the Lord. And, my mom's calling. Okay, I'll get back to this. There, my mom's doing well, everyone. She's amazing. Interesting transition, Bob, because she's slightly older than this character is. My mom's in her 80s. I think she's at the time of this recording, she's 82, but don't tell everybody. Don't tell everybody. Just know she's in her 80s. So when I read this, that's the context I have. She's as old. This guy is as old as my mom, or maybe a couple years younger, but in the general demographic. And he's like, he said, here, take my servant, let him cross over with you. And the king said, Achilleam shall cross over with me, and I will do for him whatever you wish, and anything you desire for me, I will do for you. And so all the people crossed the Jordan, and the king crossed over, and the king kissed Barzillai and bid him farewell, and Barzillai returned to his home. All right, so we're gonna stop there, because then then things get ugly. So in contrast, of the characters that are there, and I think that's why these various characters are highlighted, is you get a picture of kind of the mess of people that had showed up to, quote, welcome the king back. So you have Shimei, right, who cursed David on his way out, who served in the military with Saul. He was probably one of the commanders of Saul, who had maybe even been part of the group of 3,000 people that had chased David all around the wilderness. He swore his loyalty to Absalom. He meets David and pleads for mercy and receives it, which is awesome. But that's one type of characters, a set of characters that are there. People that had turned their back individually on David, and they want to make sure David knows, hey, haha, I'm with you because you won the battle and you're super cool and let's just get along, right? Let's forget all the craziness. And then you got Mephibosheth, who is maligned or falsely accused of not supporting David. And he's trying to make things right with David before he comes over. Because once he crosses the Jordan, right, that's the symbolic move. That's the part that communicates to all the elders that are there, David is back in the country. David has set the wheels in motion for what his kingdom is going to look like moving forward. So David interacts with Mephibosheth and Zibiah and Shimei, and he shows mercy, and he shows he facilitates equality, and then you have this guy. Now this guy was 80 years old. Okay, it says he comes from great wealth. He's a very wealthy man. And basically it says that he provided for the royal family during their stay at Mahanaim. He's the one who was sending down the livestock, the wine, the wheat, the barley. He was basically underwriting David's exile for the entire royal family and their staff. Now, he wasn't the only one, but he was probably, it would be like the wealthiest man in a community or in a town, right? And there's this influx of refugees, and they're all needing food, provision, places to stay, and they're finding places to stay, but people are like, not mercy ships. What do I want to say? The food pantries are overwhelmed. So what do we do? Well, it would be like the wealthiest guy in the region says, you know what? I'll take care of it. I'll write the checks. You guys provide the food. Now, in this case, he didn't write checks. He either bought or provided all the livestock and wheat and grain and barley and wine that they needed. He made sure that the royal family was cared for. So I think, what did we determine? We had 600 troops, probably a couple hundred of the royal family and staff. So we have about 800 people that he's been providing for months. In essence, writing the check, making things happen. And of course, David understands that. He knows who this guy is, but he doesn't necessarily see him because he lives in a town that's another 15 or 20 miles away. But he's the wealthiest man in the region, or one of them. And in a agrarian society such as they lived in, like a 20-mile distance, isn't that huge? So anyways, all that's going on. So that's who he is. And David basically says to him, he says, you know what, cross over with me and stay with me in Jerusalem. I will provide for you. Now, that's a one sentence explanation of what David's saying. David's saying, listen, you what you did for me, I want to reciprocate. I want to give you the best retirement plan that I know of. As far as I know, the best retirement plan in the country. I want you to come live with me. I'm going to make sure you have a place to stay. I'm going to make sure you always have food. I'm going to make sure you have servants. I'm going to make sure that you have a comfortable carriage to ride in. I'm going to make sure that there are, basically you will want for nothing the rest of your life. You're not going to have to worry as to whether or not you're making money this year. Like, we're going to take care of all that. All your lands, all your livestock, all of that will be taken care of by others. You get to just live with me. You can be part of banquets, part of council meetings, part of special events, part of worship nights. Everything I do is going to be welcome to you because you provided for us in a way that literally I can't repay. So he offers to this guy an amazing retirement plan. It's the best. It's the best the world has to offer. And the guy turned him down. He basically he says, "Listen, I only came here to show you that I honor and love you. That I wanted the world to know that I didn't just do this for political gain. I didn't do this for a retirement plan. I didn't do this so that if you won the battle, I would get some sort of reward." There's a lot of people, there's a lot of reasons to give, and people give for different reasons. And there are, I work at a church, and there are many people who give for different reasons, and a few of them will give because of the influence it brings them. And when you know that's happening, it's hard sometimes when you see that their check or you see their donation and oh, here we go. Like, what are they going to want to do? What do they want to buy the church that we don't really need, but they think we should have? And now they've given this money, and now they're going to come in and kind of direct the money, or they're going to, look for a place of authority or a place of influence. And that doesn't just happen at church. That happens all over the world. It's a heart issue, right? It's an identity issue. Somebody's trying to be something, and they think that this will help them get there. This particular character, Barzillai, Barzillai. He's letting the world know, listen, I didn't do this for anything other than I think David's awesome. And I'm not looking to get wealthier. I'm not looking to expand my influence. I mean, what David offered him was a great retirement plan, but he could have easily said, you know what, I'd like more livestock. I'd like you to, I'd like to maybe double what I gave you. I'd like some financial compensation. When you come into your kingdom, remember me. That would have been a way for him to respond, in which he basically would have been saying, I'm not coming with you, but I'd like a reward sent my way. I'd like a payback of some kind. When you honor somebody for who they are, when you honor them because of what they've done, you don't do so for some sort of kickback. And I think Barzillai is put in this story, one, because of what he did, but mostly because of the contrast he brings to the other people that are there. You've got people that are begging for mercy. You got people that are begging for political influence. You got people that are hoping that in some way David will ignore the fact that they supported Absalom. And they're all getting what they want. David is ignoring it. David is showing mercy. David is showing forgiveness. And here, David wants to take an opportunity to honor a man who honored him, to give influence and a position of authority / position of prominence to a man who is not motivated by power and not motivated by influence. Somebody who understands who he is and doesn't do things in order to get things back. And that really comes from a position of identity. It comes from a position of somebody who understands who he is, and he's not trying to be someone else. He's not trying to push himself on other people or his ideas on other people. He really just loved David, and he wanted to honor him. He really just saw a bunch of refugees that had moved into a nearby city, and he said, you know what? I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it. He's a fabulous character. Barzillai. It sounds Italian, doesn't it? Barzillai. But I'm sure it doesn't sound anything like an Italian name if you say it in Hebrew. Oh yeah. On with the story. So what he says, send Kimham will go with you. So Kimham is the man's son, who's probably 60, right? Maybe maybe younger. He might be in his 50s, but he's no like little boy. It's just funny. Like, here, take my son. This guy probably had a wife and kids and livestock and property of his own. But Barzillai's like, here, listen, King, I'm going to come over with you for a short distance. I'm basically going to hug you goodbye. I'm going to make sure everybody knows that I've walked you into your kingdom. I've stayed with you. I've honored you all the way to the end. And I want to go back to my town. I want to go back to where I live, where I grew up. I want to be buried near my mother and father. Listen, your retirement plan is awesome. But to be fair, let's look at me, okay? I can't tell the difference between what's enjoyable, what's not. I can't taste things anymore. I don't know what a great, chunk of lamb is and what a horrible chunk of lamb tastes like. It's all the same to me now. I don't know, I don't know what a good cup of wine tastes like or what a bad cup of wine tastes like. It all tastes like liquid to me. It's all the same. It's all blended. I'm just too old to enjoy what you're offering me. You're offering me this lavish lifestyle of opulence and influence. And I honestly, it's not the life I want. I want to go back to where I came from. I want to sleep in my own bed. I want to sleep with my wife. I want to hang out with my friends. And when I die, whenever that is, I don't want to be carried all the way back and buried with my mother and father. I just want to die there. I want to be there and just be, carried into the tomb where they are. But he's like, here, how about my son? And maybe that was a conversation he had with his son. Maybe within the framework of what ifs. Because I'm sure Barzillai had to know the king, if he wins this battle, there's a good chance he's going to offer me some sort of role. And I'm guessing the idea was floated to him a couple times. And he probably just kind of laughed or chuckled it off or said, don't worry about it. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. And then the battle's won and David is spending those next 3-4 weeks setting up his arrival back into the country. And he's getting messages back from the 10 tribes of Israel. And he reaches out to the bottom 2 tribes of Judah. And Judah's like, oh, yeah, we'll welcome you back too. And the 10 tribes of Israel are already at the river waiting for his arrival. They're all camped out there, 1,000+ people. And then Judah shows up with their probably 1,000 people. And they're camping out in the area. And everybody's waiting for David. And David knows what he's going to walk into is kind of a hornet's nest of political and personal vying of influence and power. He understands what that's like. He knows how to handle it. And he looks at Barzillai and he thinks, this is a guy I don't have to worry about. This is a guy I could trust. This is a man I could talk to about life. And I have a sense internally, and I can't prove this in any other way than my imagination. I have a sense that he looked at Barzillai like a father. And he said to himself, there's a guy I can talk to as a dad. He brings wisdom and influence that I need. Remember, he lost Ahithophel, who I'm sure he looked at as a father figure for years, who had been through the wilderness with him and then had betrayed him because of what David did when he raped his granddaughter Bathsheba. So he's minus that in his life. Remember, he had lost Jonathan there in the final battle with Saul, man, that's another incredibly close personal friend that he missed out on. And Joab's been a good, loyal friend, except for the times that Joab goes off the rails and does what he wants. And David knows, I can't really trust my total self to Joab, because Joab will take advantage of me if he really believes he's doing it for the right reasons. Like, I don't think Joab was malicious in his plannings. Like, I'm going to rebel against David and show him who's boss. I really believe that Joab's motives every time was, this is what's best for the country. This is what's best for David. This is what's best for me. But David knew, I can't be totally myself with him. And I think his whole life, and I know I dealt with this back when Jonathan died in the podcast, but Jonathan was a person that David could be completely himself. And since that time, since Jonathan's death, Jonathan has had to be himself at certain levels with certain people. I don't think there was one, what we would call one intimate friend whom he could really be himself with all the time. He didn't have to hold anything back from, whether it's flippant comments that Jonathan knew, David doesn't really mean that, I can, laugh that one off, to struggles that David was going through, like how to deal with the pressure of shifting a culture of fear and hate that Saul had created, like what it was going to be like when he was king, and how to move the culture back into a place of hope and love and peace. And all of those conversations he could have with Jonathan, but since then he's had to have different conversations with different people. I don't know what word that is. I mean, I think I do. I have to, but I'm not going to think of it now. So I think Barzillai was that father figure that he had lost in Ahithophel, and he probably realized that Ahithophel had kind of stopped being that father figure to him several years ago. And although he didn't pursue it as to why, he kind of knew, it probably has to do with Bathsheba. It probably has to do with what I did. But, he's still here. He's still loyal. He's still a friend. I just can't really share with him the struggles I'm having because of what I did to his granddaughter. And he just hadn't found that father figure yet. I think in Barzillai, he saw it. He was like, there's a guy I can talk to as a father. There's a man who can bring me the wisdom of time and experience. And Barzillai understands that and basically says, I don't want that role. I want to go back home. I want to do what I do well, and I want to die there. But I'll give you my son. Because I think in the course of life, Barzillai had that conversation with his son and probably said, listen, if David offers me a place in his kingdom, I want to pass it off to you. And evidently, Kimham, I don't know. He's in agreement with it. Now, I don't know if he agreed right away or if he went home, talked it over with his wife. But the retirement plan worked for him. And maybe he was thinking, listen, I don't, Dad can run the store back here until he dies, and I'll go back. I'll go with David. Like, that's a good role. That brings a lot of influence to our family. And it'll open up doors of marketing and doors of trade that, we wouldn't have had before. So he takes the offer, and David understands what's going on, and he understands that Barzillai didn't want the role that David was offering to him. And David says, yes, I'll take your son with me, and I'll do for him whatever you wish. Anything you desire me, I'll do for you. So he lets Barzillai know, he understands that, listen, your son's with me, but if you need anything, just let him know. If you need me to open up, sign a treaty, if you need me to send you protection, if you need more land, whatever you need, let me know. And I'll give it to your son because it's really giving it to you. And that was kind of the last conversation that he had before he crossed over. So when stay with me now. So it says, when the king crossed over, so it says, so all the people crossed the Jordan, and then the king crossed over. So it is what it says. All the people crossed over. So they all splash across the water together. Now, there were multiple people that had crossed and crisscrossed and back and forth, all that sort of thing. But now it's, again, kind of a ceremonial deal. Everybody crosses the fords of the River Jordan. And they all get involved in carrying things, carrying people, carrying whatever they could to say, I'm helping David. I'm a part of bringing David back to the country. And they get all the way across. And when he gets across, Barzillai's there, and it's just noted, the king kissed Barzillai and bid him farewell, and Barzillai returned home. There's just, because it's emphasized, that's why I think the representation of who he is to David meant a lot to David. And David wanted people to know, this is a man of honor. This is a man that I trust. This is a man who is worthy. This is a man of integrity. This was a big event. If you're watching, all the political people that have crossed, all the ones that are vying for influence and power, they would have loved to have had some one-on-one attention from David to get a hug or a high five or anything along that line. But David crosses the river with everyone else. I'm sure he was carried on shoulders or on a cart or something, because lots of people wanted to make sure that David got across and that they were a part of it. So he gets over there and he stops the whole parade. And he pulls over Barzillai, and he probably has a few close words with him, and they hug, and he kisses him. And Barzillai turns and he crosses back over the river. Now this is an 80-year-old man, but he walks back home. It's pretty crazy. And so when everything's kind of calm, I kind of picture it kind of calm, kind of quiet, and the Barzillai leaves, and when he gets over to the other side of the river, all the politics start again in earnest. Soon all the men of Israel were coming to the king and saying to him, why did our brothers, the men of Judah, steal the king away and bring him and his household across the Jordan together with all of his men? So the men of Israel come to David, and this isn't just a one-time thing. It's not like they had a meeting. It said soon all the men of Israel were coming to the king of and saying to him, this was like a stream that turned into a brook that turned into a flood. The 10 tribes of Israel wanted David to know that Judah came in second. That's really what they're trying to say. Listen, we were down here first. We were the first ones to welcome. We sent you messages long before Judah. We've heard you actually had to ask Judah to come here. Well, we want to know, like, why are they taking credit for bringing you back? Why are they the ones that are patting themselves on the back and telling everyone that they have brought David back to the nation? We're the ones who did that. There's way more of us than them. There's 10 tribes. There's only 2 up from the south. Like, what is going on, David? Why? We want more credit. We want more influence. We want positions in your government. You can't just give everything to the southern 2 tribes. See, they're expecting David to act like their relative Saul. If you remember way back in this story, Saul gave positions of power, influence to people who didn't earn it, didn't deserve it, had no idea how to do it. but he gave it to them because of who they were. They were relatives, and in his mind, they were loyal, and they were fearful of what he'd do if they weren't loyal. They wanted the lands. They wanted more power. So they would do whatever it took to keep it or to get more. And that meant obeying Saul and supporting Saul and telling Saul that everything was great when his ideas weren't so great. And they come from that sort of lineage. So they expect David to do the same. And they're looking at the tribes of Judah, and they're saying, no, like, we need to be influential. We need positions of power. If you don't give it to us, like, we're going to be mad. This isn't fair. It's not fair. They're being victims. They're looking at the circumstances. They're not looking at the heart of David. They're looking at the circumstances, and they're saying to themselves, this isn't going to work out in our favor. This is going to turn bad. We need to influence David. We need to start. We need to start now. And so the trickle became a stream, became a brook, became a river of people trying to influence David. And Judah, those elders, they see what's happening. They see the people from the top 10. I keep doing that. From the northern 10 tribes, keep coming in and saying, David, what about us? What about us? What about us? David, what about us? Remember, we're the good guys. We're the guys who brought you here. David, remember, it was my family that did this. Listen, my family kicked out the elder that supported Absalom. We are all for you. We've always been for you. There's never been a time we weren't for you. Even when Saul was king, we were for you. Like, there was just all of this flattery, all of this boisterous pride, arrogance, self-promoting. My goodness, I couldn't get that word out of me. Self-promoting that was going on. And Judah steps up and says, wait, well, we're not going to be left out. We did this because the king is closely related to us. What are you angry about? Have you, and then they ask these questions. Have we eaten any of the king's provision? Have we taken anything for ourselves? So Judah sees the politicking that's going on from the northern 10 tribes, and they step in. And they go after the tribes. They go after the elders. And I'm sure David's aware of this because David is a wise leader. And he knew that there was trouble in his country because basically they just had a civil war. There's no way around that. David has seen this boiling, right? This pot. The bubbles were forming, and he's sensing that everything's getting really hot, and the water's starting to bubble, and now it's starting to become violent in its bubbling. What do they call that? Rolling. It's a rolling boil at this point, because now Judah's all up in the face of the elders of the Israeli top 10, the top 10 tribes. I'm just gonna go with it now. The northern tribes, and they're all like, well, we brought him over because he's related to us. Like, he's our father, he's our son. We're blood. We mean more to him than you, and he means more to us than he could ever mean to you because we're related. It doesn't matter how loyal you want to say. It doesn't matter whatever you say doesn't matter because we've got blood. Blood is thicker than water. I think that's from the 70s. Might be the early 80s. I'm old, so sometimes songs come into my head from way back. All right, so they're calling blood, and they're saying, why are you angry? You can't change this. Why are you getting so heated? David likes us because we're his relatives. That's why David likes us. What's it to you? Why are you upset? You can't change that. Why are you trying to convince him? Did we eat any of his food? Have we taken any of his stuff? So what they're implying is that the northern 10 tribes did that. Now, I don't know if they did it while they were at the River Jordan, but I have a sense that when Absalom came into power, they started to raid some in the northern 10 tribes started to raid the king's provisions, the king's wheat fields, the barley fields, the livestock, all the herds that were under the king's name. The northern 10 tribes started to pilfer, started to raid. And the southern 2 tribes knew about it. And they took things that they knew, that they wanted, that belonged to the king. Maybe shelter, barns, carts, things that were needed by the king's servants in order to plow the land and harvest the land. They were taking for themselves, and they took it in the name of probably, that crazy word, reparations. Even though they may have had nothing to do with Saul and no idea about well, not that they'd have no idea about the back and forth, but their families weren't impacted negatively by Saul chasing David around in the wilderness, but they were gonna take reparations for it. Oh yeah. Oh, well, your land belongs to me because that land used to belong to Saul, and Saul was a member of the Benjamites, and I'm a member of a different tribe, but I'm really good friends with somebody who was really good friends with the third cousin of Saul, and they used to walk on that land. So clearly it now belongs to me because whatever. When you play the victim, you literally can never be satisfied. There's no way to satisfy a victim mentality. That's kind of the hideous underlying root of victimization. It's the same as selfishness. You literally you consume yourself with yourself, and you're still never satisfied. And I've heard of reparations in our culture. People want reparations for, things that were done. Were they terrible things? Yes, they were terrible things. Were they done 100 more years ago? Yes. And somehow a victim mentality says, yeah, but somehow, some way, I should be paid for that. I should be given that. Or we should tear it all down because it was built on land that belonged to whatever. Doesn't matter what transactions happen. Doesn't matter who owns the title. Doesn't matter. I'm related to somebody from somewhere 150 years ago or 20 years ago. So therefore it all belongs to me. A victim mentality is never, never, never satisfied, ever. And trust me, the deeper you're in it, the harder it is to get. It is hard work. You have to be consciously trying to get out of the victim mentality because it's just so easy. It's so easy to be the victim. And that's what happened here. The Israelites are being the victim, and Judah's being a victim, and they're accusing each other of taking advantage of the king and trying to influence the king and saying, well, basically denying that they're doing that. They're just accusing the other side of doing that. And it's getting ugly. And Israel comes back to Judah with, well, we have 10 shares of the king, so we have a greater claim to him than you do. Why do you treat us with contempt? Weren't we the first ones to talk about bringing him back? I mean, let's talk about the facts here, Judah. The fact is there's 10 of us and only 2 of you. So therefore we have more right to him than you do because there's 10 of us and 2 of you. Majority wins. Majority rules, which is a horrible form of government, which is why America's a republic, not a democracy, right? Majority rules is a horrible way to run things. I heard it explained once this way, and you probably heard this too, right? Where if majority rules, then 3 people come up to you and say, we want your bike. And you're like, no, it's my bike. And nope, it's our bike because there's 3 of us and 1 of you, so we win, we get the bike, and you lose your bike. But in a republic, 3 people come up to you and say, we want your bike, and you say no, and they say yes. There's 3 of us, 1 of you, and you say, yeah, but the law is on my side. And the law says, if you take this bike, you're thieves, and it still belongs to me. So they take the bike, and now they're thieves. They're not winners. They're not the ruling party because there's more of them. They're thieves because they've broken the law, and in the republic, the law stands with you, even if the majority is against you. Dun da da! Little civic lesson here in the story of David. So men of Israel basically saying majority rules, and therefore we claim David. We have more claim on David than you do. Oh, and let's talk about the facts here, Judah. We wanted him first. There's no denying that. You can't deny that. I mean, I picture the Middle Eastern. They just have a completely different sense of personal space than we do in America. So I picture these two guys like so close. And just the spitting hatred that's coming out in the tones of the back and forth that's going on, and that one, the first guy that says, and we wanted him first. Deny that. Deny it. You know we did. We wanted David. You had to be invited up here by David. You didn't even want him to be king until we were here. And Judah, of course, couldn't deny that. So then they'd go back to, yeah, but we're related by blood, and you're not. Why do you even want him? Oh, man, and it was on. And the men of Judah pressed their claims even more forcefully than the men of Israel. So there was a fight going on. There was a fight going on. And the 10 tribes of Israel started to separate again. Like there was this hatred, this civil war was literally playing out again in front of David. And it's fascinating to me that David's silent through all of this, at least on paper. David's observing what's going on in his kingdom, and he's observing all these elders. And remember, there's several thousand people in which this is going on. So there's chanting and shouting, and there's finger pointing, and there's activity of whatever. Probably not rock throwing yet, but it's getting close to getting violent. And David just watches all of this. And this is what I think is probably going on within David, and that is he's looking at this and he knows this is probably a picture of the nation. And even though I'm coming back, I've crossed the river, I am coming back, the whole nation is not 100% behind me, and probably hasn't been for a while. There are, what's playing out in front of me, to a lesser degree, would be played out anywhere in the country if the northern tribes and the southern tribes were in the same room. And I think in this moment, David's looking around because of what happens in the next chapter, and I'll get to that in the next podcast. I don't want to. We definitely don't have time to do the next chapter in this one, but David doesn't pin his leadership. Right? He doesn't pin his anointing on public opinion. And really, he never has. The ups and downs of who people love and how long they love them and how much they want them or not want them doesn't really impact the love that David has for God and the understanding of God's love for David. He knows that he's loved of God, and he knows that he loves God. He knows God calls him his beloved, and he lives there for the most part. He's very much aware that God loves him. And I know in this whole podcast, right? I'm not pulling various Psalms out and reading them to you, given the timeline that a lot of these Psalms are tied into. And I know that those timelines can be really wrong. And I know that Psalms, like any sort of artistic expression, can be can be applied to multiple circumstances in people's lives, which is one of the reasons why I think God likes to use the arts in communication, is because they're so adaptable. And individually, I think it's why he likes to use dreams to communicate to people, because you can have a dream and it can mean something so specific in your heart, like right then and there. And then 10 years later, you remember the dream again and you start to think, wait, maybe this is what it was about. So I don't tie it all back to the Psalms, but you can see the constant theme in the Psalms of David, that he does know that God loves him, and he does know that he loves God. And I think this is one of those moments where David is sitting in this sea of hatred and bitterness and unforgiveness and pride and arrogance and self preservation and politics and illusion and false identities. And in the middle of all that, he's literally, I think, just watching this all. People have, in the way that the language is written here, it's almost as though David becomes an appendage to everybody else's agenda. Everybody wanted to bring David back because of what it meant to them and what David could do for them. And David, I think, sees it all. And rather than try and shut everyone up and say, shut up, quiet, like you'd see in some movie, right? Shut up, everyone. Or if it was a Western, right, he'd take out his rifle and fire it in the air and everybody would get quiet. And he'd give this great monologue and everybody would be like, oh, David's our leader. And they'd all come into line. David watches all of this, and instead of taking control, which is what so many people want, right? They're trying to get control of the situation. I think David goes internal and just becomes even more aware of how much God loves him. He looks at these circumstances and he says, wow, like this is pretty bad. Like this is not good. Not a good plan for the nation. Yeah. But I know the Lord called me to this nation, and I might have lost it, some of the direction and some of the vision that I had, but I see the results of that right here. And I'm hurting. I lost a son that I probably had lost years ago because I'm not a great father. I get that. I'm probably better than my father, but I clearly have not been the father I need to be. And I haven't fathered this nation the way I need to. Oh, I know. I've protected it. I've provided for it. I've done, I've expanded it. I've given it great influence, but there's something about the heart of this nation that I've missed in the heart of God. And I need to just really be in this moment and understand that I'm still loved, that I'm still called, that I still have a role to play, or I wouldn't be here. And man, that is such a key identity thing for everybody. When you're in a moment that seems utter chaos, recognize and trust that the Lord is a good shepherd and he brought you there for a reason. That what you carry and who he made you to be is why you're there. It doesn't mean you have to manufacture something. It doesn't mean you even have to say anything. Just put faith and trust in the fact that there is something that you carry, something that you are, that is needed in that moment, and that's why you're there. And I think that's what David's doing right now. He's seeing this forceful. Remember, Judah's pressing their claims more forcefully than the men of Israel. It's gotten almost out of control. This is boiling and about to boil over. And I think David's in this sweet spot of calm. He is in the presence of God and just realizing, wow, this is huge. And I am glad that I have everything I'm needed to fulfill my calling, which is always true when God calls you to do something. He doesn't just, hope you come through. He's there for you. He's there with you, and he's giving everything you need for you to accomplish it. I think David's in that moment. I think he's understanding that deeply right now. And I think when you're allowed to read ahead, by the way, but if you go to 2 Samuel 20, then it boils over. Oh, sweet Lord, are we in trouble now? And we're out. The Epic Narrative will be back again next week. Thanks for stopping by, everybody.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.